World War I was one of the most tragic conflicts of all time. From it, we have an infinity of incredible stories and events, and many enigmas that still remain unsolved today, more than 100 years later. In the next few minutes we will tell you all about the 5 greatest mysteries of the First World War. Number 5, the death of the Red Baron. Max von Richthofen, known as the Red Baron, was a German fighter pilot considered one of the best in all of history. During his career, he recorded 80 kills, and in Germany he was seen as a war hero and even his rivals respected him. In April 1918, the Baron was on a mission in France, fighting against English and French planes alongside his cousin Wolfram. At one point, his cousin was attacked by an enemy aircraft, but the Baron appeared just in time to rescue him and launched a chase through the air. He strayed too far into hostile territory, soon realizing he was being followed by Canadian Captain Arthur Brown, who opened fire on him while, from the ground, a group of infantrymen did the same. At the end of the firefight, the Baron's plane plunged to the ground, and when the enemy troops surrounded him, they found him inside the cockpit, dead from a single shot to the heart. But, who killed the Baron? For many years this was an enigma. England gave credit to Captain Brown, although he always refused to speak on the subject. Subsequent investigations suggest that, taking into account the trajectory of the projectile and its impact on the body, it is impossible for the bullet to have come from another aircraft. Rather, it had to be fired from the ground by an Australian anti-aircraft artillery squad. The Baron's killer was probably Sergeant Cedric Popkin, who was positioned to take him down with his Vickers machine gun. Number 4, the enigmatic nurse Margaret Mall. In 2013, at Aberdeen University, an old briefcase was found inside a cupboard. When they opened it, they discovered that it was full of World War I memorabilia, newspaper clippings, letters, autographs, syringes, medical instruments, and photographs. No one knew how the briefcase got there or who it belonged to, but after following the clues, investigators were able to figure out that its owner was a British nurse named Margaret Mall. Margaret was in charge of caring for prisoners of war in Kent, England, and surprisingly, she became very popular with the troops of both sides, since Margaret cared for the wounded regardless of whether they were German, Italian or English, allies or enemies. The letters and gifts sent to her by her patients show that Margaret was loved by all, and valued for her good humor and her way of lifting the spirits of the wounded by singing songs or playing jokes. Other than this, very little is known about Margaret's life. It is known that her brother died in the conflict, and that later, she dedicated herself to treating prisoners of war. She continued working until 1969, when she turned 82 and decided to retire. Aberdeen University has called on residents to share information about Margaret's life, so they can learn more about the woman who saved countless lives in the First World War. Number 3, the first shot of the war. During the 4 years that World War I lasted, millions and millions of bullets were fired. However, today it is still a matter of debate who did it for the first time, and there are several countries with arguments to claim this merit. On August 22, 1914, a squadron of British cavalry entered Belgium, where they encountered German scouts who were patrolling the territory. The confrontation immediately began, although initially, the weapons used were cavalry sabers. The first British to open fire was Corporal Edward Thomas, but no one was injured. There was one person who claimed to have fired on August 7, Alhaji Grunchi, a West African soldier in the service of England. The colony of Togo had a lot of strategic importance for Germany, since there was a radio station there with which it communicated with its colonies. British forces captured it, and in the attack it was Alhaji who fired the first cartridge. However, on August 5 of that year, in Melbourne, Gunnery Sergeant John Purdue received orders to shoot a German ship sailing off the Australian coast. The ship was trying to get away from the port without being seen, but after warning shots, it veered off course and returned to land. Despite these cases, many historians consider that the first shot was fired by an Austro-Hungarian ship, a few hours after the war began, on July 20, 1914. The cannon shot was fired against the Serbs in the Danube River, although it is not known who was handling it. Number 2. The true identity of the Hungarian soldier Belakis. Belakis looked like an ordinary man, working as a tinsmith in a village in Hungary. In 1914 he went to fight in the war, and it was then that his landlord made a terrifying discovery. Inside his house, Kiss hid barrels with 24 strangled women inside. All the bodies had been drained of blood. The police, after an investigation, learned that Kiss was an expert seducer of women, who attracted them and then killed them. The police ordered the capture of Kiss, who was still in the war, but the assassin was more cunning. While he was in a hospital recovering from an injury, he placed the corpse of another soldier on his bed and fled. Over the years they searched for him without success, although there were witnesses who claimed to have seen him in New York, Turkey and Romania. Number 1. The disappearance of the USS Cyclops. The USS Cyclops was one of those used by the U.S. Navy to supply coal to ocean-going ships. In February 1918, it was ordered to travel from Rio de Janeiro, in Brazil, to Baltimore, in the United States, transporting a shipment of 11,000 tons of manganese, a material used to make ammunition. From the beginning the trip had drawbacks. Firstly, the maximum capacity of the ship was 8,000 tons, so it was overloaded. Second, shortly after setting sail, the ship's captain George Worley reported a technical failure in one of the vessel's cylinders. On February 20th, the Cyclops made a stop in El Salvador, and on March 9th a crew member from another ship, the Amalco, claimed to have seen it near Virginia, although this was later denied by its commander. Be that as it may, the truth is that the USS Cyclops never reached its destination. Its crew of 306 people were never seen again and their remains were never found. This was the greatest tragedy in the history of the U.S. Navy in a non-war situation. The search for the ship yielded no results, and over the years numerous theories have tried to explain what happened. On March 10th of that year, a furious storm struck the Virginia Capes, and many speculate that, combined with being overloaded, this would have been fatal to the vessel. However, this does not explain why it never issued a distress message. Some speculate that the disappearance is linked to the Bermuda Triangle, where other ships carrying manganese vanished without trace. We reached the end of the video and we want to ask you, what do you think is the biggest mystery of all? Leave us your answer in the comment box below and don't forget to subscribe to our channel to learn about many more military events that left their mark on history. Thank you very much for joining us until the end. And stay tuned for our next video.